Bank Studios. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning. Are you a panicking? Trump posted on Truth Social, the United States has a chance to do something that should have been done decades ago. Don't be weak. Don't be stupid. Don't be a panicking. That's a new party based on weak and stupid people. He put on Truth Social. Be strong, courageous, patient, and greatness will be the result. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I had a very slow start today. And Chris, I listened to you while I was driving into work this morning. You did a wonderful job. You work very well. Did he just hang up on us? I didn't hang up on you. I heard a click. No, you did a great job, so thank you very much. But you didn't answer the question if you're a panicking. Because David Portnoy's a panicking because he lost $20 million in the past 3 days.
I'm not a panicking. Yeah, I'm not a panicking. But I just think that he just needs to relax. He'll get his money back, and he's freaking out. That's fine. I like what he came up with, though. There's a reason why Dave Portnoy is Dave Portnoy. He said Monday was Orange Monday. Not Black Friday, Black Monday. It was Orange Monday.
Orange is the new black, don't you know?
That's so funny. So I'm not panicking.
No, well, I would be panicking if I lost $20 million. Well, I was with a woman yesterday, 80 years old. We were doing a spin class, and I asked her how she's doing because people that are on fixed incomes that are in the retirement age, these aren't such fun times for them, especially if they're Trump supporters. They know that they have to feel the pain before they get the glory. But still, when you're at a certain age, So she canceled. She was supposed to get new carpet today, canceled that. Supposed to get new windows, canceled that. And they're just in a bit of a holding pattern, which a lot of people are.
But did she have? Didn't she have her investments in a less risky situation because she's that old?
We didn't get to that point in our relationship.
Have you looked at her portfolio yet? You got to ask her for the portfolio.
I was just asking her to spin harder. That's all I was doing, and was hearing her out. And then, of course, I checked in with Mom a few times, and I said, "Are you in CDs? What are you in?" And she said, "No, I've got Secure, I've got IRA, I've got."
She said, "No, I do 8-tracks." 8-track.
Yeah, right. Well, a lot of people think that that's what we're talking about. But she said, but she did check in with her financial advisor. So
good.
But there was some good news yesterday. I mean, as you played, President Trump was with Benjamin Netanyahu in the White House. Mm-hmm. He did mention that they are ready to and could be ready to cut deals with over 180 nations that he tariffed. He said this while meeting with Bibi, and he brought up again that we sell 0 cars to Japan. And that he's tired of the inequity. But there was some good news yesterday, and that was in regards to the EU. They are ready to start negotiating.
Guess what? This morning,
we stand ready to negotiate with the United States. Indeed, we have offered 0 for 0 tariffs for industrial goods, as we have successfully done with many other trading partners. Because Europe is always ready for a good deal, so we keep it on the table. But we are also prepared to respond through countermeasures and defend our interests.
And that's, a small victory. And Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank, he's a Canadian entrepreneur. He said this should be the off-ramp right now that Trump should take.
It's all euro right now because this is the test case right here. I think this is a really huge opportunity for Trump to find an off-ramp here in the administration because it's not Vietnam. That's not big enough. But EU has a huge aspect that is so important, and that's on automotive. Because if you think about how restricted it's been in Germany alone or in Switzerland or France about getting U.S. cars into those markets, they've been so punitively oppressed with tariffs, and they're willing to wipe those out. So what you get to say is, look, in the interim while we're building our own factories in the U.S. on whatever it is you want to look at, I'm going to show you how it's done with Euro. And the Eurozone has been brought to its knees. It's willing to go 0-0 and open its markets up. And that's the key, Stuart. The idea that you would open up the markets and set the path for every other negotiation of the other 59 countries, whether it's Penguin Islands or whatever, it doesn't matter. This is the opportunity. This is the moment. And if Navarro sees it that way and advises Trump, and whether Lutnick sees it, but that's what the market's holding on to right now. The volatilities remain extreme. But this Eurozone deal is the beginning of a beautiful outcome, if you want to put it that way. And then you get to say to everybody, look, it was a lot of volatility, but I got us there. That's where I think the opportunity lies.
So what are the details and when would it be signed? With that, let's go to our guest, John Carney, finance and economics editor for Breitbart. He wrote several columns on the tariff trials, including expected Trump tariff boom, not a recession. Good morning, Mr. Carney. How are you?
Good morning. How are you? I haven't lost $20 million, but I also have never made $20 million. So, my insurance policy is not being that rich.
So you're not a panican, or you are a panican? Or are you friends with panicans?
I am not a panican. Look, it's very often that the stock market goes down for good policy reasons. Remember when Jerome Powell announced that he had to get tough with inflation? He made a speech in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where he talked about how the Fed was going to have to deliver some pain for Americans because inflation turned out not to be transitory, and the Fed was going to have to get serious. Well, guess what? The stock market went down a lot that day and after that. And the reason for that was because sometimes doing the right thing isn't good for equity prices. And I think that's what we're seeing right now, is that the Trump administration is doing something that is good for the economy. Not even in the long term, but in the medium term, and I think even in the short term. But it's not good for stock market prices. The Fed did the same thing. We can't give the stock market a veto over the democratic process in America. Americans, remember, Donald Trump ran on putting tariffs on. He was going to put a 20% tariff on everything. And Kamala Harris ran against that. She called it a national sales tax. Very rarely do we have such an explicit national referendum on a single policy, except for this election in 2024, where it was very much front and center tariffs.
Well, Donald Trump, and I wanted you to hear it when he was then Citizen Trump. This is him 20 years ago on Oprah, on Larry King Live.
You can call it a tax. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But those countries should be paying us major billions of dollars. And I think a lot of people are tired of watching other countries ripping off the United States. Behind our backs, they laugh at us because of our own stupidity. We let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade. I do get tired of seeing the country ripped off.
So how much, John Carney, how much has America lost in not charging or getting our fair share of tariffs?
Yeah, it's been trillions. One of the things I would say is Donald Trump, I think, and this is something Kevin Leary hinted at, he says tariffs is one of his favorite words, but I don't think that's the end goal here. I don't think it's just to make money off of tariffs, although it would help to have some revenue from tariffs where we can do tax cuts elsewhere in the economy. But I think what he really wants is for the U.S. to get a fair shake in global markets. Europe is a great example of this. It is almost impossible to sell a U.S. car in Europe. Japan's another example. These are our closest allies, and we can't sell one of our greatest products, a product that we invented, the automobile, into their markets. Why is that? It's because they have tariffs, but also a lot of non-tariff barriers, and that's one problem with the EU, the way the EU is talking about it, reduce tariffs to zero. But if we still can't sell cars there because they have too many regulations that prevent it, that doesn't help.
Yeah, they have the bowling ball regulation that Chris mentioned. I saw Trump say that. He's like, you drop the bowling ball, it makes a dent in the car, you can't sell the car.
You need a tank,
yes.
Trump said, right? So I got to ask you this, John. So a couple things I noticed this morning, well, at least I think, I'm curious your thoughts. To me, these people that are panicans, particularly the ones that are so-called experts or on the media and such, in the media, to me, it's all about what they want, their hope, their preferences, and they're hitting a panic. They're not hitting their panic button. They're hitting a button to make us panic, is what I think. And secondarily, Trump negotiating while golfing is brilliant, I think. Ho-hum, I'm having fun. What do you want? You need me? And you got the Democrats who don't know their rump from a hole in the ground freaking out over this. Are those? Is this making sense? What do you think about my thoughts on that?
I think it's right. I think Donald Trump has done a very important thing, which is shown that there is no, Trump put or stock market veto over his policies, where he's not going to back down. that was a serious question. A lot of people after the first term really did believe that if stocks go down 5%, Donald Trump will back off a policy. What he has shown is that he is not going to do this. I think that's one of the reasons, actually, we're having all of these countries now come to the negotiating table, is because they said, okay, this guy's serious. He stood up not only to us, but to the billionaires who backed him. He said, you know what, guys, I'm not changing just because your portfolio went down by 5%. And by the way, I heard you guys talking about, people on fixed incomes. I realize that it can be difficult when the stock market goes down, but it's better to go down quickly than go down over a long period of time. In other words, you want a stock market to go down all at once to price in everything that's happening, because then you can go back up. You don't want the slow grind down, which is what we had, for instance, a couple of years ago under Biden, where we had a very bad year in the stock market. You want it to happen all at once. I know that freaks people out, but it's better to get it priced in immediately.
So you said this is going to be a tariff boom, not a recession. Why?
So for a number of reasons. One, it's much better to look at the total economic package of Donald Trump. I know right now we're all focused on tariffs because that was the big announcement, but deregulation, energy abundance, and tax cuts will go a long way to boost the economy. The other thing is that tariffs are incentivize companies to reshore manufacturing in the U.S. That will actually create a huge demand for labor, a huge demand for materials, and it will be a lasting boom. By taking us off the sugar high of government spending, which is what Joe Biden tried to do. Remember, Joe Biden actually had a few of the ideas that Donald Trump has. He knew that we couldn't allow China to dominate global manufacturing forever, that we had to do something. The problem is his solution, which was have the government borrow a ton of money, spend like there was no tomorrow, just the phrase, like there's no tomorrow, tells you it's not sustainable. We were really damaging the fiscal position of the United States government. Trump has a better way. He wants to do this by resetting, reorienting global trade, global markets, so that we can have a sustainable economy. So I think this does lead to a Trump boom once people get over the initial shock, just like cracking down on inflation does. When the Fed raises rates, that usually causes a shock. But it sets the economy on a more sustainable path. That's what's happening right now. It puts us on a better path, and it will lead to better economic growth.
Well, a lot of text messages into the program about Apple products. Everything. I mean, people buy more stuff than they realize from China. Every time you're ordering something online, it's probably coming from China, if not Vietnam, if not India. What is the latest with them?
So, I have a lot of Apple products. I get frustrated sometimes because I want to buy something not from China.
Yep.
I tried to buy a music stand for my daughter so she could practice her musical instruments, and it was very hard to find one that was made in the United States or even in a very friendly country to the United States. They all seem to be made in China. That was unfortunate. I would like that not to be the system we're in. I don't think I read there was a report in the Wall Street Journal very recently that said the cost of making an iPhone is going to go up by $300. What I will tell you is the cost of an iPhone will not rise for consumers, will not rise by $300. And I know this because if Apple could charge you $300 more for your iPhone, they would have already done it. They're not holding back, saying, we're going to give the best deal we can to everybody. They're a profit-making business. They will charge the maximum they can. And it has nothing to do with how much it costs them to make it. They already have a 50% margin. If it was just based on cost, iPhones would be a lot cheaper. They're going to have their margins contract a little bit, but that will be okay in the long run because they're also going to get a huge tax cut. And I think they're going to move a huge amount of their production for the United States out of China into the U.S. or into a place that has much lower tariffs.
John, I'm looking right now. Apple is planning to shift more iPhone productions to India to avoid U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods. This comes in from an Unusual Whales account on Twitter. Threatening to check this out. Threatening the $70 billion China earns annually from the tech giant. This is what we want. By the way, also the EU, according to the Politico this morning, must purchase it with Trump's deal $350 billion in U.S. energy to receive tariff relief, along with the industrial zero tariffs or whatever it was on the industrial stuff. But I got to ask you this: I'm seeing with what Trump is doing that the old way of doing it was, well, we want to win friends and influence people, as Dale Carnegie used to say, by letting them take advantage of us a little bit or a lot. And Trump is blowing it all up, it seems to me, so that we can do it over from scratch fairly, or at least where we win somewhat or more. And so can he do this, number one, and how long will it take to do this, and how much will we suffer to get there?
So we can do it. We absolutely can. One thing I will say, just in defense of all of our trading partners, is that we actually set up the system that exists in the world today. It exists because the United States wanted to win the Cold War. And what we did was say to our European partners, look, we know your economies were devastated after World War II. We will help you rebuild it by giving you access to U.S. markets, even though we don't have the same access to your markets. One of the principles of that was we want you to become a rich nation, so eventually we will have access to your markets. Well, here we are. Now is when we get access to your markets. You either open up or we take away this deal. We set the terms in the first place. We will reset the terms this time. I don't think it will take very long. The one thing Donald Trump is going to do differently than he did in his first term is he's actually going to require the Europeans to start doing it before he takes off the tariffs. So last time around, he cut deals with China where the tariffs came down a little bit because they agreed to buy a certain amount of agriculture, a certain amount of energy, and they never did the things that they promised they were going to do. Now, Donald Trump is wary this time. He's not going to let them get away with it.
Now, I know you don't give stock tips, but things made in America, McDonald's, Albertsons, Levi's, they all have supply chains that are all American, so their stocks are doing fairly well, so that's good. All right, John Carney, we're going to have to leave it there. Financial and economics editor for Breitbart, formerly of the Wall Street Journal. Mr. Carney, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I hope we get some spring weather soon.
Yes, we do as well. Thank you so much. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
You probably didn't realize that in Illinois, there are more than 30 facilities that prey on women who are considering abortions. The media wants you to think this issue is about choice, when in reality, it's an attack to make money off